so
we're back.
So you're making $1 million to $2 million a year.
Right.
You're a highfly.com business.
Right.
You get a divorce for a woman that you lived with for 9 years.
And then?
She's getting $60,000 a month alimony.
And then?
And then the next thing is things happen to you and you're calling Legal Help Live for advice and you're making zip.
Correct.
And the question that Jorge had.
Making zip, but he's still obligated to pay
$60,000 a month. So,
right.
Jorge, the answer to your question is I think you'd be a darn fool if you don't get a lawyer because you're racking up $60,000 of back stuff. I think like modifying the alimony and doing it yourself would sort of like doing orthopedic surgery yourself. I don't think I'd do it. You know, anybody can technically represent yourself, but with this much involved, I think I would get myself a good lawyer, borrow the money, do whatever you got to do, and in this case, do it.
Yeah, ultimately, it's going to be a lot more expensive if you don't get a lawyer and you don't take care of it, and I would start now, as soon as you hang up.
Okay.
All right. Well, good luck, and the next time you want to peddle some .com stock, my partner here has bought a few bridges and a few other things out there.
And if you start making $1 million or $2 million a year again, and you think about that marriage proposal again, call us.
Don't
All right, guys. Take it easy.
Prenuptial agreement.
Yeah.
Prenuptial agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks
I
a
learned
lot.
my lesson.
Thanks a lot for calling Legal Help Live, Jorge. Good call. Interesting question.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, and going along on the, quote, alimony and child support situation, what do you do if you're an NBA basketball player?
Dribble.
Dribble and shoot. But there is no season.
Yes.
So
You might not be making a lot of money.
they're locked out,
Right.
and they don't have jobs. They're
Endorsements, maybe?
They're probably not going to have much endorsements when there's no season.
Nope.
And now these gentlemen, because all the money's in the gentleman's field,
Right.
not in the female field, we're making, $12,000, $10,000, $40,000, you name it, and a lot of them are divorced
Some
and
of them
four or five times.
Yeah.
And they've got all these massive support orders. So is this strike really trying to get in the face of the women, and it's really a ploy to get them out of their support, or is it really about basketball? Interesting question.
I think it's about money.
So
I think it's about money and paying basketball players.
well,
So if you want to call us, here's what you do. It's really pretty simple. Call 1-800-405-4222. That's a toll-free number. Ask that legal question and get a legal answer and get a gift certificate for two at a restaurant of our choosing.
so tell me about your sex in France.
Okay, so this is hot
sex
off,
is always good
hot
on television.
off the press, and maybe this wouldn't happen in the United States or in California, but in France, southern France, a judge ordered a 51-year-old man. It's a young guy, from where I'm sitting. 51-year-old man to pay his ex-wife the equivalent of $14,000 in damages, quote, for providing too little sex during their 21-year marriage. Is that fair? End quote. Is that fair?
Well, what happens if you marry a nymphomaniac in France and she gives you too much sex? You
Well,
get
that's
paid
the thing.
for that
It's
too?
the man was the defendant. She wanted more sex, and he didn't perform well enough for her.
But what if he wanted more sex or she wanted so much sex? Does it go both ways?
I would assume that the court's thinking wouldn't distinguish between sexes, but that the spouse not getting enough sex could be a successful plaintiff against the defendant who didn't provide enough sex.
Now, I know the State Department will claim that we're violating
Some treaty somewhere?
some treaty or something, but isn't extramarital sex the norm, at least in the French movies? So did the judge look outside the record and see whether or not the man was having an affair? And does that count in the sex? Do you add both women together? Is that the national norm?
I think that's an extremely good question, and it's a question that probably should be asked, but I don't think that was the fact in this case. The ex-husband, according to this story out of France, the ex-husband claimed his lovemaking was lacking, he admitted it, because he was tired and had health problems. Maybe he just didn't want to admit to having 3 or 4 affairs every day.
Well, what do you think out there? At least a fourth or a fifth or a half of our audience are married people out there. Do you believe that you should be able to sue your spouse for too little sex? Now, I can see there are 5,000 people on the freeway right now that I'm looking out of these windows, and I can see their hands up. I also see there's about 15,000 women on the freeway, and I see their hands up. And Wolf down in the booth's got both hands up. But interesting situation. So those of you who think that you should be able to sue for lack of sex in a marital relationship can indicate us by now putting both hands up.
Yeah.
But please be careful when you're driving.
That's right. And if you are in the car...
I hear the horns honking right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you're in the car and you're on a cell phone, make sure that you've got a Bluetooth or some other arrangement so that you don't get a ticket while you're driving.
The French have two things in common, I guess.
Common with whom?
Second-rate wine to California, and based on my hearing, not a lot of sex.
Well, at least in this house, that's too bad. $14,000 in damages in the equivalent. Euros, but, you know.
Well, you know why it's just 14? Because if he had performed more sex, it would have been bad sex, and it's only worth $14,000.
That's right. I suppose you can get punitive damages if it's really bad.
All right.
In the meantime, Manny Ramirez was a pretty good hitter when he was still playing baseball.
Yeah.
Apparently, he's
Manny Ramirez is the ball player that
he was with the Dodgers for a while.
No,
he came from Boston.
He came from Boston.
Right.
He was a bad boy there.
Yes, he was.
He came here to L.A. and he was a slow bad boy here, although he fits in with the ownership of the team. It looks like
that's the way it looks like now.
And he was
quite
a hitter for a while.
He was suspended for taking illegal drugs. And then he retired next time he was caught doing the same thing.
In baseball, he was known for his hitting.
He was not a fielder.
No.
He was clearly not a fielder.
He was known for his hitting.
He was known for his hitting.
I mean, that would be hitting the ball.
Yeah. And
so now what is he hitting?
Well, his wife. Here it is in the Los Angeles Times. Former Dodger slugger Manny Ramirez was arrested in Florida on Monday night on suspicion of battering his wife during an argument.
So it's allegedly.
Allegedly. Well, it's allegedly until he pleads guilty. But you know what? Spousal abuse at this level, a hit as opposed to serious bone-breaking injuries, and that happens too, or even worse, it's really difficult to get the spouse to want to prosecute the case later. Now, maybe she's angry now, and maybe she's called the police now, and maybe, for a certainty, Manny was arrested and he bailed out. But I'm not sure she's going to want to prosecute this case when it comes time to charge and bring this case to trial.
Yeah, but does it really matter whether she wants to prosecute or not? Isn't it up to, if this happened in Los Angeles County or in Southern California or in the state of California, in most instances it'd be up to the district attorney's office
to file.
Because it's a felony in most cases.
Right.
To file and to prosecute the case. And she doesn't have any say-so.
What if she doesn't testify?
Well, can't they prove it by videotape or what she told
Well,
them?
that's the question. When I was in my 20s and prosecuting
aren't there
cases,
special laws now for spousal abuse?
There are special laws for spousal abuse, but I can promise you that if she doesn't testify, this case doesn't go anywhere.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, I'm certain that that's true. But I can tell you this. When I was in my 20s and prosecuting criminal cases right here, I did have such a situation. And before trial, the wife calls up and says, I want my husband back. I don't want to testify. And you know what? The injuries were substantial. There were photographs taken at the hospital, and there were witnesses. I put the case on. She didn't testify, and I got a conviction.
Yeah, the problem with all this is that the spousal abuse syndrome, whether it's a male getting abused or a female, is that the relationship is by dominance, and one person is dominating the other person, and therefore the victim usually is psychologically in such a mess that they'll do anything that the beater does, and that's why they don't leave.
It's very true.
And it's a horrible situation. I'm not saying whether he did it or he didn't do it.
Right.
But the amazing part about it is with TMZ and with all the paparazzi around and with everything going on, how anybody in the public life thinks they can get away with anything. You know, In Southern California, you go to a restaurant, and you're walking in, and there are people hiding behind. They're always hiding behind the newspaper racks with cameras, or standing there just waiting for something to happen.
I always thought it was me. I always thought they wanted my picture.
They weren't looking for me.
No, but when they see me coming, and they realize who it is, they put their cameras down.
There are all kinds of beaters. There are wife beaters, and then what about people in the when you think about people abusing the system? What about people in the tennis business, like Serena Williams, who on national television, what was it, the U.S. Open?
Yeah.
Suddenly
the final
is got this tirade against some tennis judge who's making $250 for judging this contest, and makes a call that she doesn't think is right, and she goes after him like nobody's business. And now for the second time, because she did this before, the next day she says, "Oh, I was in the zone. I don't remember anything about that."
Yeah.
And what do? They fine her $2,000. Come on,
What does that mean in the context of her income for a year?
Nothing. It's absolutely nothing. They're charging us, $500 almost for traffic violations, and she makes millions of dollars a year, and they give her a $2,000 fine. There's no teeth in this. I mean, let's get tough like baseball or football, where they really suspend them and fine them a lot of money. There's no excuse for these kind of tirades. 1-800-405-4222. When we come back, if you're so lucky to get on the air, we'll get you a dinner or two, dinner for two, or tap dancing for two at a restaurant of our choice.
Yep.
This is Legal Help Live.
Yep.
I'm Steve.
I'm Ralph.
This is Ralph. And even though my name is misspelled up on the marquee,
is it really?
It's close enough. It's Stephen Solomon, but it's Stephen. I've only been doing this for 7 years. And
well, they'll get it right. Only 7 years? Come on. They'll get it right next time.
1-800-405-4222.
But look how they spelled Ralph. There's only one way. Okay, we'll see you in a few minutes, and we'll be talking to all of you. We'll see you then.